Welcome back to the Wellness with Delaney podcast. Today, I am sitting down with Sharon Lemoine. She is an advanced registered nurse practitioner. She works and actually owns Gig Harbor Concierge Medicine, and she is an expert in all things hormones, healthy hormones with aging for men and women. So, men, do not hear the word hormones and shut off the podcast because it matters for you too. We are going to talk about hormone myths, hormone replacement myths. We're going to talk about ways for you to optimize your life from a young age all the way through like old age. I mean, we're going to get into all the nitty gritty, and hopefully you guys can walk away with some really amazing practicals so that you can start living your best life today. Sharon, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much. And I love educating as much as I possibly can. So this is a great opportunity.
Yay, I'm so excited. Yeah, I have been really, really into hormone health. So when I found out that you're an expert on all of that, I was like, we have to talk. So just really simple, because people are coming from all different levels of understanding, right? And I never want to assume that people even know what we're talking about when we get into it. So what are the main hormones at play for men and women?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And let me just preface this too. Like my background is emergency medicine. And quite honestly, hormones were not rarely on my radar. It was like, are you alive? Are you breathing? Are you bleeding out? And if not, then we got to get you out the doors and get you home. So when my career had shifted into hormones, I had a lot of learning to do as even a medical professional. And I still continue to learn. And every time I'm increasing my education and my knowledge base, I just want to like give it all to you guys. So yeah, those are great questions. So for men, everybody's like, okay, they're full of testosterone, and we're all pretty aware of that. Women, obviously, we're a little more complicated. And the obvious is estrogen, right? But we've got progesterone, and a lot of people don't realize that women have 4 times as much testosterone as they do estrogen. So it's a whole combination, lots of fluctuations. So yeah, it's there's a lot of hormones going on. Of course, then you think about thyroid, but really the hot topic right now is perimenopause, menopause, and that's hitting on women with estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone deficiencies. And then, of course, in men, that slowly declining testosterone over the lifespan.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, what is the main role of estrogen?
Yeah, so estrogen regulates a lot. So if we talk about hormones in general, they are chemical messengers for the body. So they just pretty much are telling all those cells like what to do, what's your goal, what's your job. So estrogen is, and we can kind of encompass testosterone too and progesterone. We think of these as sex hormones, but they really have so many other functions in the body. And what we don't realize is there's receptors in our cells, in our brain, in our bones, in our muscle tissue for estrogen and testosterone. So they do lots of things, but usually it's metabolism, the sexual development, and mental health is a big one that I think we're really starting to dive into and talk more and more about how hormone fluctuations and deficiencies are significantly addressing or as an issue for those mental issues.
Okay, yeah, and we definitely need to get into the mental health part because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people feel like gaslit by their own bodies when they have a hormone deficiency, which is crazy. But so then, what would be the main role of progesterone be then?
Yeah, so progesterone and estrogen work together. When we're talking more in perimenopause and menopause, and we're talking about replacement, when we talk about progesterone, it helps with sleep, and it's also a calming hormone. The other big one is that it protects our uterus. So when we're talking to women that are wanting estrogen replacement, we have to balance that out with estrogen. I always go back to a chart, and I wish I had a visual because I'm such a visual person. When we talk about fluctuations of estrogen, normal cycles early on through puberty and young womanhood, we've got that monthly cycle. It's like, I always refer back to my EKG and ER days, right? So it's a normal rhythmic pattern. When we hit perimenopause, that progesterone and estrogen, they are all over the place. And I always refer, it's kind of like a car running out of gas. So you might get a little bit of energy and you're going down the road and it starts to putter. And so that month or two, your ovaries are like, ugh, I don't want to do what I'm supposed to do. And then you might get a little spurt of energy, and over time, they just kind of wear out. So the progesterone does follow those waxes and wanes of fluctuations, but really calming hormone and sleep. So when we talk about replacement, that is definitely a piece of the puzzle that we have to consider.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had to really heal my relationship with progesterone. I know for me, I feel like if my personality was a hormone, it would be estrogen, because I'm like, go, 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 like go get her, want to work out. And I've had to learn to love progesterone and be like, this is when I'm going to relax. This is when I'm going to go inward and like embrace that, like in my luteal phase. And it's been very freeing. Okay, so then tell me about testosterone.
Oh gosh, I love my testosterone. And again, this is educating everybody that women need testosterone. It does so many things. And the first thing we think about is libido. And yes, that is definitely a big place for it. But it is for weight and metabolism, right? As we get older, when we hit about the age 30, our testosterone is just a very slow decline. There's no peaks and valleys. It's just you start here and you're just kind of going slowly down, right? So over time, we're losing muscle mass, which decreases metabolism. And then my patients are coming in and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm putting like this midsection weight on and I'm killing myself in the gym and I'm eating all the right things and my hydration, everything's on point. And you're fighting an uphill battle, right? Because of that testosterone decline and that loss of muscle mass. And then in return, right, less muscle mass, lower metabolism, higher risk for insulin resistance. So that is a big piece of the puzzle when we're talking about overall health and muscle mass. And that's a whole nother conversation. And I'm so glad everybody's talking about it right now. Testosterone also is surprisingly a calming hormone. We think, I mean, I'm pretty type A and go, go, go. And I thought, oh my God, you give me testosterone, I'm going to be raging. But actually what we find is that you just kind of roll with the punches more. You're not so irritable. There's lots of brain cell receptors for testosterone. And I kind of always make the joke when my menopausal women or perimenopausal women come in and they're like, well, how do I know if I'm in perimenopause, or how do I know when my hormones wear out and it's time for another treatment? I'm like, when you want to punch your husband in the face because you're just so irritable. Yeah. So yeah, testosterone is a big one for mental health. Another big population that I don't think we've talked about a lot, and I've started to see more and more of this in my office, is patients that are in maybe their mid-30s. And I'm talking about females, mid-30s, very healthy, and they've had maybe one or two babies. And so they're kind of in that 2-3 year postpartum phase. And they come in and again, living the healthy lifestyle. And they're saying, okay, I've got this anxiety. There's no life event. There's no major trigger. I just feel this angst. I don't know what's going on. And so they go to their primary care doctor. And unfortunately, I never talk badly about primary care or providers. I respect the heck out of them. But their first reaction is, let's get you on an antidepressant. And again, there is time and place for those medications. So when they're coming into me, they're on antidepressants and not really reporting a huge difference. And then they have a lot of the side effects. So in this population, we're able to test their testosterone levels and they're on the lower end. And so what I've seen is by replacing just testosterone, their ovaries are still working, estrogen and progesterone, it's still doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. But by sprinkling them with a little testosterone, their mood is better, their irritability has gone down, and they're actually either cutting their medications in half or coming off their antidepressant. Wow. So that really kind of raises the question, are we missing a big piece? Are we not looking at that root cause before we're so quick to put patients on antidepressants? And I really want to speak to this more and more. And I was doing some research, and number one, the incidence of depression and diagnosis in America, we're about 21 million right now, which is about 6% of our population. And the projections are crazy of where that's going. In return, the industry of prescribing antidepressants is from 2024, the projection to 2033 is supposed to be times 4, right?
Oh my gosh.
So again, like, do we keep throwing medicine at this, or do we look at what is this trigger? What is causing this? You know, I was a teenager in the 80s, and we didn't talk about mental health. So I'm so glad that we're shedding light on it. But again, as we're talking about it and the incidents and trying to find resources how to deal with it, what's the cause, right? Is it our crappy foods? And I know you've dived into this, and I'm so glad, again, we're shedding light on this. That alone is huge. Social media. You know, I always make the joke when I went to nursing school, I didn't even have the internet. And here we are on a podcast. So I'm learning. But just the social piece that goes with social media and that constant stress and stimulus that is coming at you. I mean, is that a trigger for that mental health? So I think there's a lot of things that come into play, but I really think we are missing the mark on hormone optimization, even at an early age.
Yeah, well, isn't it interesting too that we're seeing a sharp decline in testosterone? We are in a world where, I mean, where everything is full of these plastics that are like these xenoestrogens, right? And we're seeing so much endometriosis, we're seeing so many hormone dysfunctions and an increase in depression. And yeah, it's like my PCP is a naturopath, and she makes this joke. We don't have a Lexapro deficiency, we have a hormone deficiency.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where, like, of course, people are going to do what works best for them, but why is the first line of defense giving someone a medication that will have so many side effects when there could be a root cause in their body that we can heal? And then not only will that fix their mental health, but their physical health, because these things go hand in hand. And I'm like, I wish people realized how connected our bodies are. There's not these single symptoms that are independent of each other. Often when you fix one thing, you fix the other.
Oh, it's so true.
I love that you're talking about this, and I want to dive more into the mental health component because I think it's really interesting. So with men, I know with women, you probably see women who are a little bit more proactive when it comes to like coming in and being like, something's off. They know that menopause is something that they're looking at. They know that they want to do stuff. But like with men, I feel like they can be more treatment resistant, especially when it comes to like optimization treatments. What are some of the mental health symptoms that you see in men when their testosterone declines?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we are really starting to dive in more and more to men's health, because what's happening is my whole journey with hormones started with offering weight loss. And all these middle-aged women were coming in, again, killing themselves in the gym, doing everything, and coming in, and it was almost like a broken record. And I'm like, okay, hang on a second. And I was feeling the same thing. So I thought, okay, we need to look at hormones. So they're coming in, and I do want to touch on the fact, as far as mental health, these women, often I've had some students kind of shadowing me, and they said, you know, do your patients cry a lot during these consultations? And I said 100%, because they are so frustrated, so at wit's end. And when I'm sitting here validating their symptoms, it's just eye-opening for them, that it's just like a weight has been lifted off their shoulder, because they don't have to carry this alone. And there's a reason that I'm giving them that they feel like this. So I love that piece of our practice, and it's so rewarding to just, if nothing else, validate how they feel. So what happens is they come in, we treat them, and then after 3-6 months, when they're coming to see me, they're bringing their husbands. And they're like, and the husbands are like, okay, wait, what happened to her? Because I need to keep up with her now. And that's usually the kind of that how they kind of present into our office. Once I get them talking kind of one-on-one, it seems like guys are opening up more and more. But here's the thing with guys. Like, I'm married to a fireman, and they're big, gruff guys, right? And quite honestly, I have found that if they admit that they could be testosterone deficient, they're saying, I'm less of a man, or my parts don't work. I'm like, oh my God, it's not that, right?
Yeah.
So I know that as I'm talking more and more with men, it is the mental health piece would be just lack of motivation, is a huge one, right? Which in turn, they wake up, I don't really feel like doing anything. So they're not getting outside, getting that sunlight. They're not getting to the gym. They're less motivated to be social, right? Depression can set in. But really just that lack of zest for life is quite common. And then what happens is, again, lower testosterone in men, less muscle mass. Then they start kind of putting on that weight. Well, there goes their confidence, right? So it is kind of this vicious cycle. So I'm really happy that we're, and I say we, because me and my husband, starting to really identify in men where they're at, getting over that stigma that you can be testosterone deficient and it doesn't make you less of a man. And let's get you optimized and make you feel like you used to feel. And we really focus on first responders. We have obviously a soft spot with me being in emergency medicine and seeing these guys come in all hours of the night, the stresses of the job, the depression rate, suicide rate, divorce rate, not just in this middle life age group, but in first responders is quite alarming. So to go and really say, look, I'm going to make you feel better now. I'm going to get you through that job so you've got great performance, great confidence through your career. And then you get to the end result at that finishing line when you retire and your health is optimized. So I think as we start talking more and more about it, guys are just like, oh, I'm here because my wife told me to be initially. And then once they start talking, they realize like, hey, I again, get that validation of how they feel. There's a legitimate reason. And once we get them optimized, they're really more accepting of taking that next step to watch their health and be more responsible for themselves and their health journey.
That's amazing. And that's really beautiful that you can serve people in that way. And I think you're so right. There is this stigma. Like for women, it's a little bit different. I think for women, maybe it has more to do with fertility, that we really put our value as women. But for men, if you admit that you're low T, that's almost like admitting this. It's almost like they're like saying, I have boobs, I'm a woman. Like they really do identify with their testosterone, and that's important. But if they're low in testosterone, it doesn't make them less of a man. It just means that it's time to do something about it and get back to feeling amazing and optimized. So at what age do we typically start to see hormones decline in men and women?
Yeah, so this is a great point that I wanted to bring up. People are always asking me, what's too young? My youngest male patient recently that I've treated was 20 years old.
Wow.
Great kid, smart, social, had dealt with some ongoing kind of increasing anxiety for no obvious life triggers or reason, and went off to college and really struggled. And I was talking on and off with his mom, and they're very holistic, healthy diet, really pushing the exercise routines and being around other people, and really kind of tried all the different avenues, because of course you're talking about hormone replacement in a young male and you're like, oh, I don't want to mess with anything, right? So finally, after kind of trying everything and not seeing real results, I said, let's just bring him in. Let's just check his levels. And again, we're talking about testosterone, but we're talking about vitamin D, thyroid, like there's so many other things. All of his blood work looked great, except for his testosterone. So the definition of testosterone deficiency is that level under 300. And I believe off the top of my head, he was like 230. So for a 20-year-old male, with no obvious other physiological reason why that testosterone is low, because we're looking at things like luteinizing hormone and other sex hormones that could potentially be pituitary or something in the brain that's not causing that signal to release that testosterone. We had ruled all those things out, truly just low. So again, first question, why? Why is this 20-year-old thriving kid low? What's that external environmental trigger? And I think we're on the right thing to finally figure that out. So we sat down, we talked about all the risks, all the benefits of testosterone, and we treated him. And it's been about, I want to say about 6 weeks. And he says he is more motivated, more energetic. He's home from college right now. His mom says he's so much better to kind of interact with, and funny and laughing, and has this new job and thriving and got a promotion. And And I was even texting him and kind of just checking on, like, hey, how you doing? And again, I can't say enough of what a great kid this is. And to see that palpable difference in him is so rewarding. So again, that's at 20. Now, as we get older, right, at that about that age 30, for both men and women, that testosterone starts to decline. So the older we get, the less we have. So the easier it is to treat you. I just got to sprinkle some on you and you just perk right up like a flower. But usually in men, they just say, hey, I'm just more motivated, more energetic. For women, the misconception is they're too young. And we talk about and actually, I think the youngest female I've done was my daughter. At the time, she was 24, living in Texas, working 6 days a week, killing life. But she's like, gosh, I just kind of have this anxiety. And I'm like, okay, we again did some blood work. And we decided, let's just try a little bit of testosterone. Again, I'm not touching her ovaries are fine. Estrogen, progesterone, let's just give you that testosterone. And she definitely said sleep is better. That's a big one with testosterone, is sleep disturbance. Sleeping better, more focused, and just really just more energetic. And then they kind of make the joke, because now I have a grandbaby. So of course we increased her libido. And that's him behind me. So so a blessing there. But mid-20s, I am certainly going to look at that testosterone. So that is a big game player. So I think we have to separate the two, right? Symptoms of low testosterone and symptoms of low estrogen and progesterone. And there is a big difference. And so that anxiety, sleep disturbance, night sweats, and weight gain can be very isolated to low or declining testosterone levels.
That's really good to know, because it is so true that, especially for women, I think there's this level of, we always feel like we need to do more and that we're not doing enough. And so I see so many women just killing themselves at the gym, hours of cardio, heavy lifting every day, which is probably also now affecting their cortisol negatively, and, eating like birds and not like really working so hard and having like a counter effect. And my heart is so with those women, because it's not like they're not trying.
Right.
It's like working harder versus working smarter. When you realize the role that your hormones play in all of these things, then you don't have to, yes, we're going to work hard, but you don't have to kill yourself to achieve your goals, because you shouldn't have to kill yourself to achieve your goals. Like, that is not how our bodies are designed to function. So it's amazing when you're able to help people optimize their body so that they can like be sustainable. They don't have to do these insane things.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is the sustainability. I know I've gotten on my kicks. I'm like, I'm going to work out 7 days a week and eat, 2 bites of food during the day. That you can't do that, right? The other thing specific to, if you're doing the right things, if you're eating well, if you're working out, getting enough sleep, right? By giving you that testosterone, number one, more motivation to keep going, more energy, but specifically with your workouts, you're going to find better endurance and quicker recovery and quicker gains, right?
Amazing.
I highly suggest anybody that's really into the health and fitness and watching your weight, and especially if you're on the GLP-1s, the absolute message, you have to get on a body scanner. We have to measure muscle mass, right? And so in our clinic, of course, we're maintaining muscle mass while we're dropping the weight and watching these GLP-1 patients. But what's so rewarding is to see that mass go down, that muscle mass slowly going up in conjunction with the testosterone therapy and their healthy lifestyle. It's like the perfect match.
Incredible. And I think, a lot of women are a little bit scared of putting on muscle because they're worried they're going to be bulky or big or manly. So why is muscle mass important for women, especially as they age?
Yeah, no, that is a great point, because every time I say this, I'm thinking, do they think they have to be like some big bodybuilder? Absolutely not. Even if you think about the muscle you have, how dense is it? Is it moderately, or is it just kind of flabby, right? Even if you take the same muscle and you just make it really strong and really dense, that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to like get all bulky and have these huge, muscles sticking out to here. I mean, if that's your thing, great. But it's keeping that muscle mass dense and working at its best optimal level, right? Which again, if you want to burn fat, you have to have that muscle. It's that metabolism, right? that goes back to the patients that have been on these Ozempic and tirzepatide, all these medications. I love them because it's a great tool if you're doing everything correctly. But the problem is we would see patients where, number one, their hormones were shot and pre-diabetic. So they go on these medications. They're not doing the work. They lose 50 pounds of fat. They come off the medicine because it's expensive for a lot of people. They go back to their old habits. Now they've put some of that weight back on with significantly less amount of muscle mass that they started with. They're a metabolic mess because now they actually have more fat, less muscle. So we have to really think. We're not being bodybuilders. We're just tightening up those muscles so that they're working more efficiently. And, down the road, I'm in my 50s. So 50s, 60s, we need that structure to protect our bones, right? We're all going to fall down. I always say, I'm class, we're all going to fall down. Is our body going to maintain our bone and our muscle, our ligaments? Are we going to be able to go for that walk and not sprain an ankle or tear a tendon? So it's all encompassing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And yeah, with that, the GLP-1s, I see that so much where women, they literally cannot eat without throwing up. They're constipated, they have diarrhea, they have all these issues. And I'm like, okay. And granted, most of the time when I see women, they're doing it purely for aesthetics. And I'm like, at what cost? Because I don't see a lot of these women trying to eat healthier, work out, like optimize their health. They're going straight to these drugs because it's an easy fix. And I'm like, no, like my heart's breaking. I'm like, let me help you. I want to help you. Okay. So, and then I see a lot of women. So muscle we've established is important for so many reasons, functional, for fat burning, for all these things, metabolic health. I also see a lot of women who live off of literal bird food, like a piece of sourdough, avocado toast, whatever, and they're not eating protein, specifically animal-based protein. Why is protein important for hormone health?
Well, I think it kind of goes all around. I think you're hitting on a very important piece of protein. And we can tell our patients, like we look at muscle mass, right? And if I use myself as an example, I have 70 pounds of lean muscle mass out of my total weight. So that tells me minimum, I need 1 gram of protein per pound of muscle mass. We like closer to 1.5. So for me, right about that 110, 120 grams of protein a day. So I send my patients out the door and they're supposed to know what that looks like. I don't even know what that looks like. So we have our apps. We have to do the education on how many grams is in an egg. 6 to 7 grams of in one egg. Well, I'm not going to eat 10 in a day, right? But we have to know, what does that look like in our food? I always go back, and I think I've shared this in my other conversations and posts that, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So I have an autoimmune issue that functions around everything I put in my body. What does protein do to your blood sugar? What does carbohydrates do to your sugar? What is fats? How much is that going to raise your sugar? So I've had to do, and as a medical professional, and I was already a nurse when I was diagnosed, I had no idea on nutrition. And I think back to that because I thought, okay, wait a minute, I've got medical training and I didn't know. So how do I expect my patients to know what that looks like? Mm-hmm. So I'm so fortunate that my team is so setting the example. They live great, healthy lifestyles. They know nutrition. They are educating our patients. And I would say, don't expect that you know this. This is normal to not know. So we have to get that out. And there's some apps. We use the InBody scanner. There's an app. And so if I'm sitting down with a patient, I can say, look, yes, we've optimized your testosterone and estrogen. Keep doing what you're doing, build that muscle. But here's exactly how many calories a day you need, how many grams of protein per meal, how many carbohydrates. And here's examples of what that looks like. Mm-hmm. Salmon, fish, chicken, how many servings. I even know, and I think we need to make sure we tell our patients, I'm not just going to tell you to do these things. It's hard to do, right? So it's okay to not know, and it's okay to struggle. We struggle every single day. I'm like, how the hell do I get 100 grams of protein in my crazy day? And you just have to be creative and find a protein powder, which I'm really picky, but I did find one, and I'm putting those scoops in my cup of coffee, and I start my day with 20 grams of protein, right? It can be done. It takes a village. But when you couple in the hormones, back to your question, how does that all play together? To me, it's a perfect combination to optimize your testosterone and maybe estrogen if you need it, and a GLP-1. But you have to be willing to do the work that goes with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, protein's a hard one, I feel like, for the women. They're so scared. I think it's interesting because I think people think eating a lot of protein is very manly. Like if you go to a restaurant, like for breakfast, you look around, you'll see the men have steak and eggs. The women might have like a little croissant or avocado toast or
Yeah.
like a granola. And I'm like, wait, the women actually need more protein than the men. Like we need to be normalizing this and not saying that eating protein is manly. I see that so much and I'm like, okay, let's get the
Interesting.
girls to stop eating like birds. So that's been my goal. And I try to preach that a lot as someone I've actually really, I feel like made my body more feminine by eating more like manly, quote
That's a
unquote.
great point. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you're building that muscle. You're also, you're managing blood sugar. So your hormones are going to, like, there's so many things that I just love about it. Okay. And so I really want to get into, so you do the HRT, and I don't even know if a lot of people know what it is. I know there's a lot of myths that I want to get into. I've had a lot of questions. I opened up a Q&A about this episode, and I've had some questions about HRT and effects of that. So like very simple overview. What is HRT?
So that is hormone replacement therapy, and it really does encompass quite a bit. We have to, a lot of the discussion is more on women, and that's based on fear, right? Fear drives a lot of our decision making, and that's a whole nother episode, right? On identifying our fears and how it drives our decisions when we really need to take a step back and get the right information. So this goes back to the biggest women's research project called the Women's Health Initiative. We refer to it as the WHI. It was started in the 1990s, and these doctors that came together had a hunch that possibly estrogen was a source or a cause for cardiovascular disease. That was going into the research. It was over $500 million at the time, although our research funds have changed. But at the time, that was a lot of money dedicated for women's research that really is lacking. That went on for years. And in 2002, this group of doctors saw that there was a slight uptick in the data saying, hey, wait a minute, estrogen might be causing breast cancer. If we look at the subjects, the average age of the women were over 60 with various health problems already, and they were studying synthetic estrogen and progesterone, right? And this was like Prempro, and Progestin. These was the synthetic forms. The data that they had was not statistically relevant to say that this was a true cause, but they thought it was enough. So they came out, they had this big press conference, and literally that day, the industry changed. It scared the hell out of the patients. It scared the hell out of providers. And they're like, oh my God, I've been doing this and killing my patients with breast cancer. And it completely changed prescribing. They stopped, they really never really talked a lot about menopause in medical school, but certainly didn't hit on hormone therapy. The message was it was bad. And even going through my training, even all my years as a nurse in the ER, that was the message. You're going to get blood clot. You're going to get breast cancer. Over the last 2 decades, research has continued to go on. Those specific doctors on that research on the WHI have since said we were wrong, but the damage has been done, right? So again, that pendulum is swinging. I think there's a huge movement in menopause and hormones, both for men and women. The research definitely favors men. There is very little research on women. So we're doing a little bit of as safe practice as we can, but a lot of like bioidentical hormones are not FDA approved, and that's why insurance won't cover them. Don't get me on the whole big pharma insurance industry. That again is a whole nother episode, but it's a piece of the puzzle why the research has not been done, monetary value on hormones, and again, another episode. But overall, we're looking at testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and replacing that as our bodies become deficient.
Mm-hmm. And you said these are bioidentical. How is that different from like the synthetics that you might get in a birth control pill?
Yep. So bioidentical matches the exact chemical makeup as they are in your body.
Mhm.
Synthetic, I love chemistry, and if you look at the chemical structure, when there's a synthetic medication or substance, those bonds, they're just a little bit different, right? And they're produced, in a lab, just in a different chemical makeup. And that's where we're seeing all of those side effects is in
Mm,
synthetic. So
yep.
when you hear bioidentical, to me, I hear safer.
Yeah.
Obviously, we still have to talk with each patient for risk factors, and it's always risks versus benefit. You can't take any medication without having some sort of risk, but is it extremely low? Or are you
Mhm.
having other things going on in your health history that we have to talk about? To me, testosterone is probably one of the safer ones because we have to think about women, right? Breast cancer, that doesn't mean they can't have estrogen, but we certainly have to weed out who is the right patient and have that risk versus benefit conversation. But synthetic in men, we've seen a lot of side effects because they're doing injectable. You're taking a large dose, usually once a week. So with that large dose, kind of ups that heart rate and blood pressure, and then you come back down. And
Mhm.
lots of peaks and valleys. Now, some men have figured out the right dose. It works well. They've had symptom relief and they're doing fine. And there are bioidentical versions of that. I'm not a fan of synthetic. Sometimes there are certain allergies that people have and the basis of how they compound these hormones. So we have to take that into consideration too. But compounding the hormones can give you precise dosing. And again, the argument is, well, they're not, a lot of them aren't FDA approved. But then we have to ask ourselves why. And again, that's the next episode.
Yes. Oh my gosh. The FDA, one of these days is going to come after me because I am so I same we're on the same page. I'm like, it's
100%.
ridiculous, the insurance industry. I mean, I know so many providers who do more alternative root cause treatments don't even take insurance anymore. I'm like, why do I even have it? My naturopath doesn't take it. My acupuncturist doesn't take it. Nobody takes it. Yet I have it. I think it's just in case I get
No.
pregnant. But
Right, right.
I think that's about it at this point. But then I'm like, will my doulas take it? I don't know. Um, but with all of that, okay, so I know that one question I have gotten is people have been curious about the cancer component with HRT. And I
Yeah,
think, like you said, the damage has been done,
yeah.
even though they disproved that. I had somebody ask if there is like any risk, if you have history of breast cancer in your family, would you be concerned putting them on HRT, or is that something that we can probably work around and still like do the HRT?
This is a big topic. So when that WHI study came out, wrong information. Okay. Estrogen does not cause breast cancer. Plain and simple. That has been a myth, and we need to correct that just right out the gates. It does not cause breast cancer. Now, if you get breast cancer, some of those cancer cells can respond to estrogen. So they look at it like estrogen and sometimes progesterone are kind of the food to feed those cancer cells.
Mm,
So that's the correlation. Same thing in men. Testosterone does not cause prostate cancer. But if they get, and it's pretty prominent as men get older, testosterone can be the food, right? So that's the big thing. What's interesting to me is they're like, oh my God, young women, I've got a remote history of breast cancer and I can't have estrogen, but they're going to drink alcohol every day,
mhm.
right? And we
Yeah.
know alcohol causes many types of cancers. So to me, I'm like, again, like look at the cause.
Yeah.
Um, you can, if you do have a family history and you're really concerned, you can get tested for the BRCA gene. Again, I can speak to this it's very close to my heart because both my grandmothers were diagnosed in their 30s. My maternal grandmother died at 36.
Oh.
My paternal grandmother had breast cancer in her 30s and she had mastectomy and went on to live a long life. My mother diagnosed in her 50s. My sister diagnosed at 28 and died at 32.
Oh, I'm so
So
sorry.
yeah. So, and I'm pretty open about my history. At 28, I had a bilateral mastectomy prophylactically. I'm kind of an all or nothing. So that's just my style, not for everybody. But we have to look at this fear of breast cancer because of estrogen. Think about this. If estrogen was the true cause of breast cancer, when you have the most estrogen is in your 20s and 30s. Why is not all of the women dropping like flies from breast cancer at that age?
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
When we see it later in life, is it genetics is always a big one. Is it lifestyle? Right? There are some doctors out there that I highly respect, but they claim that a lot of cancers are preventable due to lifestyle. A lot of cancers are preventable based on gut health. Again, another episode. But they basically say, if you live this certain way, you should not have cancer. And I think that's taking that genetic piece out of that, which is a bold statement. I'm not sure I'm there, 100%, but I certainly know what track they're thinking. So yes, with breast cancer, definitely a hot topic. My other argument to that is when you look at statistics of heart disease, premenopausal women, the risks of dying of heart disease is the same ratio as breast cancer. 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer. 1 in 8 women premenopausal will have heart disease. After menopause in women, 1 in 3 will die of heart disease.
Wow.
And we're worried about breast cancer? Right? So yeah, it's just kind of changing the mindset a little bit. And again, just continuing to educate. But I do have women, and then here's the other thing. Estrogen is heart protective. So when we have patients that have gone through breast cancer and had that bilateral mastectomy, gone through chemo, gone through radiation, they've gone through hell, right? And now doctors want to put them on tamoxifen or an estrogen blocker in case that cancer comes back. We don't want to provide food for it. Okay, that's a theory. But on the flip side of it, what are we doing to their overall health? I have just blocked all their heart protection.
Wow.
Their mood, they're putting on weight. Now they're type 2 diabetic. They don't feel motivated. So that's just the estrogen side of it. If we talk about breast cancer and testosterone, one of a very well-respected doctor, Rebecca Glazier, she's done a lot of research, and she has done a lot of studies showing that by testosterone alone, by replacing testosterone, we're reducing breast cancer by 40%.
Wow.
She's even done some studies, and I was just reading these the other day again. She was saying that, and these are a little bit older studies, but she's had some patients that had metastatic breast cancer. They had a tumor on their sternum, on their breastbone. And that particular patient didn't want surgery. They didn't want to go through chemo and radiation. So she's like, okay, let's do this experimental treatment. She took a testosterone pellet and she put it right next to the tumor. And they did this repeatedly over a period of time, and it completely shrunk the tumor, and the patient went on to live a healthy life.
That's incredible.
It is. It's crazy. But why are we not doing research on something potentially that we could actually fix the problem with something that we actually make in our body, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of compelling research, but there's a lot of lacking research too. But breast cancer, prostate cancer, just because you have a risk, just because you've had a history of it, does not mean that discussion for hormone replacement is off the table.
Yeah. And sickness is a business. So that's why I think sometimes it's so hard to get the correct studies out there, because if they contradict something that's making a lot of money,
100%.
It can be really hard. It feels like you're constantly swimming upstream, trying to inform people and trying to support people and help people in a way that does not line the pockets of big pharma. So it is quite an uphill battle, and I absolutely commend you for doing it and educating, because there is so much fear around HRT. I hear the cancer thing so much, and that has been thrown out, but because you get that in people's heads, they can't seem to work around it and overcome it and be like, okay, wait, maybe this was built off of completely misinformation, maybe biased information, all of this. So it's really good to know. Okay, so how does one get a pellet? How do you put it in your body?
Let's talk pellets. So I highly, highly respect all these doctors who are out there right now, really opening up the discussions and education and industry of menopause. And there's lots of modalities for hormone replacement. There's pills, there's patches, there's creams, injections, and pellets. everybody kind of has their comfort zone on how, as a provider, how do I want to give these to my patients? The issue with oral medications is that it has to go through the GI tract, be metabolized through the liver. So then by the time it goes through all those systems, what's left for us to absorb? And of course, with our gut health and all the craziness and inflammation and all the stuff going on, it can vary person to person. So that absorption rate can be questionable. When you do a cream or a patch, typically absorption rates are about 40%. Now, again, it varies for a lot of people. And these can be great options for treatment for symptom relief. And a lot of women are doing them, a lot of men, and it works just fine. Where my mindset is, and again, I'm kind of all or nothing. I want to do the absolute very best that I can by my patients and myself. So I'm a fan of pellets, and they've gotten kind of a bad rap. And what is a pellet? It looks like a little grain of rice. They're compounded. They come in both testosterone and estrogen, and we can make various doses for the patient. It goes subcutaneously, so usually in the upper buttock cheek, in that little fat area. And I make a tiny little incision. It goes under the skin, and it releases, bioidentical, it releases on that normal, natural rhythm you would typically see in a patient that, makes testosterone and estrogen. What I like about the pellets is we put it in that fat and the little capillaries form around it. So basically it's released based on heart rate. So let's say we're emotionally stressed. Heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, same thing. We're working out or physically active, same thing. So with increased heart rate, increased blood flow around that pellet, and it just spits out a little bit when you need it. So your levels are more on demand. It lasts 3 to 4 months, 5 months for some people. So they're only having to come to see me 3 or 4 times a year. And I love it. And here's the big takeaway. And again, research is continuing to really support these claims, but there is enough out there to support what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Number one, pellets have been around since the 1930s. Wow. We haven't heard a lot about them, but they have been used very effectively. The idea, and this is the big idea I really want to start focusing on to really defend those providers out there pushing pellets, is I can get your blood levels up to a therapeutic level for the fact of those long-term health benefits. Again, I always say, I'm going to make you feel better now. Like when my patients come to me, it's so rewarding because I know one way or another, you're going to feel better. And they come back and like, oh, I feel so great. But what are the long-term health benefits? By getting those blood levels up safely. So I have to have that conversation with patients like, okay, when you go to the lab and they say this blood test is this range, how do they get that range? Number one, if I'm looking at testosterone in both men and women and the lab says it's supposed to be here, well, they tested a bunch of healthy patients, hundreds and thousands, and they said, okay, where's everybody falling? And they're like, well, this is the average, so we're going to call this normal. Well, when I'm looking at a range for testosterone, are you 18 or are you 80? That's a big difference. They don't account for that.
Wow.
It's just a very broad range and say, okay, you should fall in here. What the research shows is if I get your blood level from here to here at the therapeutic level, symptom relief, long-term health benefits. With a patch or a cream or a pill, it's difficult to get that much into the bloodstream and maintain that level. That's why I'm a fan of pellets.
That's really good to know. Yeah. And then, so you said some people kind of, I guess, like metabolize, break them down, however you say, like they can break down faster. What are some things that people, like, are there lifestyle things that cause it to break down faster than others? Or is it just like a genetic thing?
Yeah. And this is why I love medicine, because it's always a moving target, right?
Yeah.
So everybody can be different. So my marathon runners, right? Most of my women are coming to see me every 12 weeks, pretty much right on the dot, because they're like, oh yeah, I feel it wearing off because I'm gonna punch my husband in the face again. Let's fix it. My marathon runners, they're coming in every 10 weeks because they've got so much blood flow around that pellet, it's just spitting out, right?
Yeah.
My sedentary patients, they might not be coming to me maybe every 4 or 5 months because it's got a little bit of blood flow around that pellet. Metabolic things, obviously other health issues, other medications certainly can affect how long that lasts. I found out for myself, I can go 5 months. Wow. So I'm good for me, right? But most of my women are every 3 months, most of my men 3 to 4 months. But there's a downside, and there's not the perfect solution for everybody. Downside of pellets, that is, once it's in, I'm not going to go dig it out. It's in,
Yeah.
which means I have to be very, very cautious and conservative when dosing. And I think where the pellets are getting a bad rap is that there's providers out there just willy-nilly kind of, here's your pellet, not checking blood work. And yeah, that you can certainly get into trouble. So you've got to make sure you're seeing a provider that's doing obviously blood work and blood levels before. I am doing 4 to 6 week blood work on every single patient after their first round. Because two things I have to know: how did they respond? Are they really sensitive, really resistant, or do we hit it right on the mark? And then over a few rounds, then I need to know, how long is it lasting? So I'm doing blood work before, I'm doing blood work right after their first round, and then I'm doing blood work about every 9 months to just make sure we're watching the levels.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about this setting in medicine is I get to treat the patient, not the number.
Yeah.
Obviously within all the safety realms. But if I've got a patient, so for my men, let's say, average or on the lab, their testosterone should be anywhere from like 280 to 850 range. Again, very broad. If I get their level up to 1,000, a little bit higher, they feel good, long-term health benefits. So let's say I have that 20-year-old that comes in with a testosterone of 230, and I get him up to 800, 900, we're done. If he feels like a rock star, we're done.
Yeah.
I don't have to keep going. I might get him up to 1,100. He'd be, I don't feel it, right? Because there's a lot of other reasons that we have to look at. So I'm treating the patient. How severe are your symptoms? What are your risk factors? There's a lot to consider, and I'm going to stand by pellets. And a lot of people out there are saying negative things. And again, it's not for everybody, but I feel very confident in how conservative and just we're watching them like a hawk. I think it's a great option. The other piece of that is cost. Here's something really crazy. Testosterone therapy in women. It is not covered by insurance. Shocking, right? Unless you can get cream. It's not covered. You can do injections, not covered, and pellets. Same thing, and pellets are usually more expensive. The only way you can get testosterone, if you're female, covered by insurance, is if you're transitioning to male.
Oh my gosh. That is so insane because women literally have so much testosterone.
4
Like
times as much as estrogen.
Why has medicine not seemed to catch up to this very basic fact?
Well, because the research isn't there, right? They're not researching testosterone on women. One of the doctors I follow, Dr. Kelly Casperson, she's awesome. She's a urologist, really funny, speaking about menopause and adult sex health. She made a great point. She said that all the research out there on multiple medicines, high blood pressure medicine, cardiac medicines, all the research is on men, most of it. And they assume, well, if it's safe for men, it's safe for women. And that's how they justify prescribing. Well, we have 1/10 of the testosterone that men have. And again, that research is not there. So yes, we're completely behind. Why the hell wouldn't our insurance cover testosterone when we can show I'm decreasing anxiety, depression, they're sleeping better, they're less chance for breast cancer? For a cheap option to keep them healthier, shocking. I hope it changes.
So crazy. We will see. I hope so. I mean, that is just absolutely mind blowing.
Isn't
And
it?
it's sad because then it really, once again, I feel like with so many things, access is such a touchy point when it comes to health. Like I was just in the Midwest even, and I was telling my family, like, I never really understood like food disparities until I spent time in a town where you cannot get organic food. You cannot get grass-fed beef. Like you cannot get these things do not exist here. And I'm like, I'm so fortunate to live in a city where I have every bougie grocery store within a 2-mile radius, and I can get grass-fed. Like I can get cows that were living their best life. I can get, everything is organic. Everything, and I have access to that. And so it's kind of the same thing though. Like if you have the money to prioritize your hormone health, sure. But then what about these poor women who do not have the same access to be spending money that they don't have, that's not covered by insurance, to be healthy? it's just so messed up.
It is. And you mentioned earlier, I think we're definitely on the same page about how corrupt and our insurance industry is, and really just everything's monetary value. I have been a cash pay, based practice, and yeah, pellets are more expensive, and I definitely want to be able to address everybody's needs. And that's why vaginal estrogen, topical estrogen patches, like if that is what is your best fit, I want to be able to offer that to you. I do feel like I'm playing with the devil a little bit, because I have decided to try and take a couple insurance companies and offer more primary care, because we're already doing it with our patients.
Yeah.
For those patients that, if you want to get healthy, because really your health is your responsibility, not mine. I'm just here to hold your hand. I want to be able to offer that to people, and they're paying a ton of money for the insurance. Let's use it hopefully in the best possible way and prevent disease. So yeah, we're going to start doing that. So it'll be interesting to kind of balance out both sides of the coin, and hopefully with the movement of education and talking about the needs of hormone replacement, will be set up to where we can start billing insurance for pellets and testosterone cream for women, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I hope to see the needle move that way, because people like you are working so hard to help people get healthy, but you cannot control whether or not the insurance takes it. So I would love to see that whole industry shift in a way that's a little bit more holistically minded. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, we will see. Okay, so, and then I do have actually one more kind of non sequitur question from the audience that I was like, oh, this is so interesting. But how can long COVID affect your hormones, or can it affect your hormones?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. We don't know. I mean, as far as I know, I don't think there's any recent research out, because it's fairly new. And COVID is just, I was in the emergency department through COVID, and very eye-opening on so many levels. We talked a little bit about how fear drives us. And quite honestly, I saw that pendulum swing so far, and the fear in people, some of it 100%, we have to be cautious, but it drove them complete opposite of where they needed to be. So COVID, I think, definitely changed how people thought about their health. Who's telling them what's healthy, what's right, what's wrong? You guys got to get your facts right. And it was interesting because of not just COVID, but then the vaccine and all the controversies. Again, it is a personal choice for people. But I saw fear making those decisions instead of factual information. And I bring that up because it ties so much into our health industry and what we're doing. It's like, oh, I saw on Facebook this post, and I'm not supposed to eat this or eat that, or I'm not supposed. And I'm like, hang on. Number one, who's posting it? Who's the source of the research? Are they making a lot of money off of this? Do they have an agenda? These are things we have to ask. But for COVID and hormones, I think time will tell. I think it was very odd how it hit people very hard, and the next person not. The big caution was immune compromised people, young, old, people on chemo, like things that were really going on, autoimmune disease. These people were hit harder. But then I had healthy 20-year-olds that were critical, that had not one unhealthy day in their life, and then they got COVID and they were quite sick and coming in later with heart failure. And we just saw so many different presentations that, I mean, talk about a moving target. You just don't know what to expect. Hormone wise, I have been very curious about fertility in women. One of my patients actually works in Seattle at the fertility clinic there. And she was talking how she's worked with patients post-COVID. And she was on the side of harvesting eggs. And she said there is a palpable difference of the amount of eggs and the decrease in what they're getting post-COVID.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
and it seems like we see a lot of women talking about in vitro and IVF, all these things. I mean, when my kids are in their 20s and 30s, when I was having babies, that was a rarity, right? Why is this so prevalent now? I mean, again, what are these triggers we have not quite identified yet that's causing fertility, and all these unhealthy states, mental issues, right? COVID, who knows? And again, is it COVID? Is it the vaccine? Is it, we don't know. I say just tread cautiously and make sure you look at the factual information.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to weigh out the pros and cons of everything and make decisions for yourself. And so that's, really, really important. Really crazy about the eggs. I'm like,
isn't that
gonna
crazy?
deep dive on that. That is so
I
crazy.
would be really curious to see if there's research or data coming out to monitor that. If it wasn't COVID or anything involved with that, then what is it?
Yeah.
Is it our foods? Is it the plastics? Is it the heavy metals?
Is it everything? Yeah.
I know something palpable has changed now from when I was that age. And it wasn't that long ago, a couple decades. Where the hell are we going to be in 2 more decades if we don't figure this out?
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping, my hope is, and obviously I hope this is not even a political statement, but like, I hope with these next 4 years of like the MAHA movement, one thing that can come out of it is maybe we can start to like pull back at least some of these things, right? Because I think it's a little bit of everything pushing the flywheel. It's got to be, diet, lifestyle, social media, technology, EMF, the clothes we wear, like all of these things. And don't even get me started on the vaccine schedule we're putting babies on.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Nowadays, a baby, like a 1-year-old has more vaccines than a 70-year-old. It's crazy. And so I'm like, it's probably a little bit of everything,
I think so. It'll be, I always say like, I'm faith-based and I'm like, one day when I'm up in heaven, I'm going to have all the answers. I just want to help people now. And we have to try and figure this out.
1000%. Well, you are definitely doing the Lord's work in being investigative, working with the patient. I love, like what you said, you work with the patient, not the number. And that is what I want to see more providers doing. And I love talking to providers who have that heart because, and also nowadays, I think medicine has been demonized because we're seeing doctors that don't really care. But there are practitioners, there are nurses, there are doctors, there are whatever, like so many people in the industry who do care and who do want to get to the root cause. And it's important to highlight that and to exemplify that because hopefully people then can A, find you, work with you, and B, just like realize that there is good out there and they don't have to walk through health things alone and avoid care because of the world we live in. So I would love to know, what are your current health goals?
My current health goals. Well, and here's the thing. I could go on and on about my health history. And I always say, God's got a plan. Because when, things are happening to you, you're like, oh my God, I've been healthy. I've been doing all the right things. Why is this stuff happening to me? There's a true reason. I, at the age of 31, I was a nurse in the ER. And it was kind of fun, again, a God thing, because I had dropped some weight, but I had just had my 3rd baby and I'm a mom of 3 and working in the ER. And I was working one day and a nurse I hadn't seen in a while came downstairs to get a patient for me. She's like, oh my God, Sharon, you've lost a lot of weight. I'm like, I know, I'm eating like a pig. I don't know what's going on. And this crusty old doctor who I love and respect comes by. He's like, you're probably diabetic. I said, oh, shut up. No, I'm not. I worked out. I was very, like you, young, very health conscious from day one. And when he said that, I was like, well, hang on. I've been eating a lot, peeing a lot. I've lost weight. What's going on? So I walked over to our little machine that checks blood sugars and I was 500. And I was like, this is wrong. So I went to the other machine, checked it. And I was like, oh my God. And quickly diagnosed as a type 1. And as we know, type 1, autoimmune, your body attacks the cells that make insulin. You stop making insulin. That's the only fix for the rest of your life is you got to take insulin. That's why I'm so passionate to help type 2 diabetics, because you guys can fix it, right? It takes work, but we can reverse this. So at 31, again, I had just had my 3rd baby. And for me, it was like, I have to make sure I control this because I want to be there for them, right? I don't want to be a burden on my family. I am the only person that's in control of this. And so what's interesting is I had always wanted to run. I worked with these nurses and they would come in at 7 a.m. They're like, oh, we did a 10-mile run this morning. I'm like, when? And we started running. And 13 months after my diagnosis, I did a marathon. And for me, that was my therapy. My mantra was like, you will overcome. This will not control you. And so I've stayed very active. And then I obviously had shared that I had a bilateral mastectomy, trying to, get that issue taken care of. And then I had thyroid cancer and Graves' disease. So I had my thyroid out, which is like, okay. And then I had full hysterectomy and my ovaries were taken out because I found with my monthly cycle, it affected my blood sugar. Right before I started my period, sugar skyrocketed, and then they would plummet the day I started. So I'm like, let's just take that variation out. Let's take them ovaries too. Again, hormones, this is so funny. When I was in nursing school, I knew I wanted to be in the ER. I want to do CPR and I want to start IVs. I want to do all these things. I hated hormones. It was my worst subject.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am living a life
Wow.
and going through health issues that affect every single hormone. So I'm like, okay, clearly God's got a plan. I'm going through this for a reason. And I just share all that because I can relate. I'm not that 500-pound cardiologist telling you you're unhealthy and you got to go work out, eat right. I can kind of lose that message in translation, right?
Yep.
I am there. I've gone through all these things. I'm more than willing to share that with you. I understand how you feel. And I also understand the struggle every day. I am not perfect. I'm trying to get that damn protein in every day. I'm trying to make time for my workouts. Stay hydrated. So really for me, I've learned to not make big lofty goals. It's every day. What can I do in little tiny pieces today? Get my supplements in, get my water intake, get that darn weightlifting in. And with my new grandbaby, he's 9 months old now. He's good resistance. Like he's 20 pounds. I'm like, I'm getting some arms carrying him around.
Yeah.
So that's my daily struggle. And literally daily. I can have one meal and my sugar is like, oh, well, I didn't bolus enough. Now my sugar is really high. So it's a constant struggle. And again, I'm more than willing to share that because if it helps and makes me relatable as your provider, and it's a better connection for my patients. We're all in it together. I learned from you. You're inspiring, being so young and on top of things and really thinking, yeah, I want to feel good now, but where's my health again going to be when you're in menopause, right? Just got to get people forward thinking that the time is now.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it's really amazing when you can use your struggles and the things you've walked through, your sickness, all these things, and you can master it and then help others. I think that's the best way to use every adversity in our health is to use it because now you have a place of not only understanding and education, but compassion and empathy and sympathy because you've been there. So that it really does enhance your practice because you're not just coming at it as like somebody who's never experienced it, can't walk in their shoes, but like you've lived in those shoes. So that's a really beautiful purpose and a really beautiful mission. So where can people find you if they want to reach out on social media or maybe come get treatments from you? Like how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so we're in Gig Harbor, Washington. We have a Gig Harbor Medical Spa and Concierge Medicine, so we do the pretty stuff. My passion obviously is medicine. I'm on social media at the Concierge NP. And really, I'm trying to build up my practice. I've got a great team. And as we grow, I'm trying to put all the pieces in place where I know that they're giving great care to the patients and I can get out and do more public speaking and get the word out because ultimately I want to educate, advocate, and validate patients. If you want to come see me, awesome. But my bigger goal is giving people a voice and the right education. I'm a skeptic at heart, and I'm trying to use that to the best ability to ask the right questions, make sure you're getting correct information. I'm constantly learning myself. And like I said, I just want to get it out as fast as I'm learning and empower all of you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. I learned so much and I just absolutely adore this conversation. And I love everything you're doing. And just keep up the good work. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been so great. Well, you guys, thank you so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please give us a 5-star review and help us get the word out there. Make sure to reach out to Sharon on Instagram, tag her, tag myself as you share this episode so that we can spread the information, the correct information about hormones, HRT, and how to optimize your life at any age. As always, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will chat again soon.